Welcome, everyone. This is Larry Johnson, founder of the Eight Principles, and your host for Eight Principles Voices for another episode. And I have a gentleman with me who is a real advocate for men's work in the Christian space, and he's going to tell us the wonderful things that he's doing, and I'm looking forward to it. Robert Tunmire, who is the CEO and one of the founders of Heroic Men. Welcome, Robert.
Good to be here with you, Larry.
So tell us a little bit. Well, before we get to Heroic Men, I want to know how you got to be involved with it. What was the motivation? What was the energy? What happened in your life that
Yeah.
did you do this?
So I'll give you the quick backdrop. Why am I so engaged with ministry to men? I lived the first 40 years of my life without God in my life. I was a very successful businessman, but I was a pagan heathen. No, no God, never went to church, was never baptized. I just had my 25th birthday. I was baptized February 28th, 1999. So it's been 25 years now. And, you don't know how lost you are until you're found.
Yeah, that's usually the case. Yes.
Yeah. And I I lived a very good life, was very successful. But as I tell people, once Jesus came into my life, I didn't realize that I did not have any peace and real joy in my life. So shortly after being baptized in 1999, a longtime friend of mine, an attorney who had done a lot of work for me, he's a great Christian man. He called me and says, "Hey, Robert, Patrick Morley is going to be speaking at Columbus Avenue Baptist Church. You need to come here and hear him talk." He wrote a book called Man in the Mirror.
Oh, yeah.
And I think you'd like to hear him. So I said, sure, David. And so I went and heard Pat, and really his message really connected with me. And otherwise baptized in an evangelical church, a Bible church, actually.
Oh, really?
And
So you were not
yeah,
baptized Roman Catholic?
oh, no, not at all. Uh-oh. No, I was evangelical slash Bible. And
The
I
plot
met
thickens, Robert. The plot thickens. Okay.
Yeah, yes. And so I met Patrick Morley, and Pat and I struck up a friendship, very close friendship. And because of my career, which was in franchising, he was expanding his ministry called Man in the Mirror. And he asked me if I would come down and observe a training that they were doing. So I did. I went down there and sit in on the training. It was myself and 68 or so Protestant ministers from different churches around the country. And I was sitting in my hotel room Friday evening, reading and praying, and a very new Christian. And all of a sudden, God puts this message on my heart. I want you to go back to Waco and get a Man in the Mirror Bible study going in Waco, Texas. I'm like, hold on. You're talking to the wrong guy here. I'm a businessman. I'm not me. And then he said something to me that was really bizarre. He said, I want you to go get Ministry to Men going in the Catholic Church in the Austin Diocese.
It was that specific.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm there like, what? I can't even spell Catholic. What are you talking about?
So you didn't come out of a Roman home?
No,
All
I
right.
came out of a non-Christian home.
Just non-affiliated of any kind, not lapsed
Huh.
anything. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Wow, this is unusual. Yeah.
My dad was a Marine Corps for 20 years. I mean, he was a serious Marine, 2 tours Vietnam, and he was serious.
Oh,
Drill
that's serious.
instructor. And so I go back to Waco, and I had a good friend, still a good friend of mine. Saw him the other day, as a matter of fact, Jay Mathis, who had a small Protestant congregation here in Waco Church. And so I approached him and said, "Hey, Jay, I'd like you to go down to Waco and see this organization called Man in the Mirror. And then I'd like to get a Bible study going here in Waco. If I'll organize it if you'll do the teaching." And he goes, "Okay." Well, so I flew him down there. He met Pat and got familiar with everything. So we got Man in the Mirror going here in Waco, Texas. And we had 60, 70 guys showing up every Thursday morning,
Wow.
and of all denominations. It was really great. And so did that for a number of years. And, lo and behold, I ultimately, I was single, and raising two sons on my own, and got married to a wonderful woman. Lord bless me incredibly. And she happened to be Catholic, which is not how I became Catholic, oddly enough. Um, but I continue to grow my relationship with Pat and his ministry. In fact, his son and my two sons and he and we spent time down at the Cayman Islands together.
Very nice.
Yeah, very close with him, and continue to this day. I'm actually on the board of Man in the Mirror. So I have a very deep connection with the ministry of men on the Protestant side. And it's really great because we collaborate a lot together. Anyway, so ultimately, I became Catholic in October of 2004.
And what motivated that? If you said your wife wasn't the prime mover, what happened?
Yeah, so when we got married, she was living in Fort Worth, and she moved to Waco, and we'd go to my church sometimes, and sometimes we'd go to her church. And finally, she looked at me and says, "Robert, I don't want to go to your church." And I said, "Okay, Kitty." I said, I mean, I'll go to the Catholic Church. I did not really have at that moment, a deep thought about the difference one way or the other. It
You
really
didn't
was
have
not.
any fixed theology. You were still growing and moving.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, I'd been a Christian at that time for probably 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like,
It's not
sure.
long.
Yeah, no. And, I didn't have a dog in the fight, really. It's like, oh, sure. And so we started going to the Catholic Church. And I would go up and receive communion. Became part of the Men of St. Jerome's, Church of St. Jerome's. Nobody ever asked me if I was Catholic. I mean, it's like, and I didn't think it really mattered, right? And so what happened is this has been like May of 2000 or something like that, maybe 2000. Yeah, probably 2022. And the Men of St. Jerome's wanted to have a camp out, a little get together. So I said, "Well, you can do it at our place. We live on 28 acres. We got ponds." And so about 25 guys came out along with Father Don. And we're sitting around the campfire that Friday evening. And one of the guys go, "Hey, Robert, we really don't know much about your story. Would you tell us your story?" So I did. And all of a sudden, they all look at me and realize I'm not Catholic. I mean, And but Father Don was really an incredible priest. He looked at me and said, "Robert, I would not refuse you communion." Which really, I didn't realize the magnitude of that comment at the time.
That's a very serious statement for a priest to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the next morning, an older gentleman, which, old is definitely a different word now than back then.
It's a relative term, Robert.
Yeah, it's a relative term. Yes. And so he comes up to me and says, "Robert, can I talk to you?" I said, "Sure, Chuck." And he goes, "Have you ever thought about going through RCIA?" And I said, "What's RCIA?" That's the rite of Christian initiation into the Catholic Church. It's about a 6 month class once a week for 3 hours, and then you come into the church. And I thought, once a week for 3 hours for 6 months. Yeah. And I said, "Well, I'll think about it, Chuck." And then he says to me, you know, Robert, you really shouldn't receive communion. And he explains to me why for a few minutes. And I look at him and I said, I'll think about that, Chuck. But then I realized that because it was going to be known really quick that I'm not Catholic in the parish anymore. I
Oh, the
mean,
word, the cat's out of the bag.
cat's out of the bag. Yeah. And so I didn't want to put Father Don in a hard spot.
Yeah.
And so, but I decided RCIA started in like September. So I thought, I'm going to go through RCIA. Not to become Catholic. Okay. That was not my intent. I just wanted to learn more.
Yeah.
And I can remember leaving Kitty, my wife, went to and by the way, Chuck said he would be my sponsor.
Okay.
And so Kitty went with me to the introductory class. And I told her on the way home, I said, Kitty, I don't think there's anybody in that class that really wants to be there. I said, they're either married to a Catholic or they're getting married to a Catholic, but I don't think they really want to be there. But I said, I'm going to go to this class. And I'm one of these people, Larry, as you can imagine, when I do something, boom, I dive into it.
Oh, I figured that out the first 5 minutes I spoke with you. Okay. Yes.
And
You're
so I started studying, and the book they gave us, I wrote out questions. I'd go with questions, and I studied and I really started learning a lot. And I'd go home from class and say, "Hey, Kitty, did you know this?" And she'd look at me and go, "I never heard that." Not uncommon for a cradle Catholic, no disrespect meant, but they weren't catechized well
No.
in my generation. And so they played this video in the middle of class, midway through, by Dr. Scott Hahn. Very brilliant theologian, was a Protestant minister for years and became Catholic. And it's called The Lamb's Supper. And it talks about the Eucharist.
Yes.
And Larry, I'll never forget being there. And it's like a light bulb went off my head. Wow, this is the truth. God is the real presence in that Eucharist. So I got it. And so I went to the deacon who was kind of heading the class, and I said, Deacon, I want to become Catholic. And I only had one small problem. I'd been married twice before.
Oh.
And in the Catholic Church, in order to become Catholic, if you've been married before, you have to see about if you can get your marriages annulled. Otherwise, you're living in a state of adultery, essentially.
Yeah.
And my wife really appreciated that. And
oh, sure she did. Of course she did.
It's not like she didn't know I'd been married twice before, but so I like, okay, well, how do you do that? Oh, it's a process. Let me tell you something.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is.
It's one thing to have to get one marriage annulled. It's something else to get two. So I started on the paperwork and I set it aside because it's arduous. And you got to send paperwork to your previous wife, and you have to have witnesses. And I mean, it's serious. So I set it aside, and I couldn't come into full communion with the church at Easter because I didn't have my marriages annulled. Yeah. And Kitty had to quit going up for communion because, we weren't in communion with the church, and which she didn't really appreciate either, but she understood. So after not being able to come into the church, I picked the paperwork back up and started working on it. And after getting everything somewhat organized, Deacon Ray, he was great. He said, Robert, I'm not sure this paperwork is going to do all this justice. I want you to write out a letter detailing the first 40 years of your life.
Okay.
So I said, okay, so I can do that. So I wrote like an 11-page outline of what transpired the first 11 years of my life. And he put it with the two folders. sent it away to tribunal. And lo and behold, a couple months later, comes back, and both my marriages were annulled because they determined these were not valid marriages, which I would definitely agree. I was married at 17 the first time. She was 16.
That's pretty young.
Yeah, pretty young. Yeah, we didn't have to get married either. Let me say that. And anyways, but so marriages were annulled. 2000, October 2004, came into the fullness of the church, became Catholic.
Congratulations.
Yeah. And so after being involved with Catholic Church in the Austin Diocese for about a year, the bishop, then Bishop Amon, his assistant, called me and said that he'd like to have dinner with myself and Kitty. And so I called Kitty and said, "Hey, Kitty, the bishop wants to have dinner with you and I." And she goes, "How'd you get a call from a bishop? I've never got a call from a bishop." I said,
Something's
"Kitty,"
up.
I said, "Kitty, I don't know. I've never got a call from a bishop, never met a bishop before." So we go down to have dinner with the bishop, Bishop Amon, who's a phenomenal, phenomenal priest. And as it was, I had some stuff written out on my legal pad about some things that I think need to be done. And one of them is there's no ministry to men going on here in the Austin Diocese. Nothing going on. I says, "Here's what we need to do. Da, 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 da." And he says, "Go do it, Robert." I'm like, "Oh, whoa, that's not what I wanted to hear."
Yeah, when you point out something, you're appointed to go to it.
Yeah, yeah. And so we did. We launched the Central Texas Fellowship of Catholic Men in the Austin Diocese in June of 2006. We've just had our 12th annual men's conference. We have ministry to men going on in 43 parishes on a weekly basis here in the Austin Diocese today. But I did find out at the end of dinner, I said, "Bishop, is there anything I can do for you?" Which I learned, don't ever do that. And he looks and he looks at me and goes, "Yeah, I'm launching a capital campaign and I need a good lead donor." He goes, would you write me a check for X? And I'm like, "What?" I'm thinking to myself, first off, what makes you think I would write you a check for that? And secondly, what makes you think I can? But I've since found out how that all works. So anyways, and Bishop Amon's now Archbishop of New Orleans for 10 years, and we're very, very close. Our son went to Tulane, and every time we went down there when he was in school, we'd have dinner together. So we're very close. But anyway, so that's how I got involved with Ministry to Men in the Catholic Church. And because of what I did in my career, I became connected with a lot of other Catholic men around North America. And some of them had something, a few of them had something very similar to what we had here in the Austin Diocese. But we knew the state of men in the Catholic Church, ministry to men, was very weak. So a group of us met in June of 2018 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And we discussed, okay, what's going on in ministry to men in the Catholic Church? And we asked ourselves a question: are we going to do something about it, or are we going to talk about it?
Right.
And we decided we're going to do something about it. So we formed an organization called Catholic Men's Leadership Alliance, which is the parent organization. And we launched it. No real game plan except the objective of getting ministry to men going in every diocese in North America. That's the game plan.
That was your goal.
And when COVID hit, which was, shortly after we launched this thing.
That wasn't long.
Yeah, I mean, COVID hit in March of 2019? No, 2020. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so about a year, a little bit over a year, almost a year and a half after we launched it. And it turned out to be a very, very good blessing because we partnered with the Augustine Institute, which is a major organization that produces content, and they have a platform called Formed, which has all the information out there, all the programs and everything. And we were able to create a partnership with them to create an electronic platform called Heroic Men, HEROIC Men.
It's right there on the
Um,
screen up there. I see it. Yeah.
yes, and
It's
that's really our forward-facing brand. So it's really heroic men powered by the Catholic Men's Leadership Alliance.
okay. So
But
this is
the
when you became a separate organization, when you founded this group called Heroic Man? Is this when that happened?
Well, Heroic Men is under the umbrella of Catholic Men's Leadership Alliance.
Okay.
Heroic Men is the public-facing brand,
Okay.
but is powered by the organization Catholic Men's Leadership Alliance.
Okay.
But that's a little long for people to remember and get.
Yeah.
People can remember Heroic Men very easy.
And I believe you told me in our first conversation, this is an independent organization. It's not
Yes.
associated with the diocese or with
No,
the
we have our own 501(c), and our goal, as I mentioned, is to get ministry to men going in every diocese in North America. And so Heroic Men is an electronic platform that we were able to curate. We went out to all the different men's organizations in the Catholic Church and put their content on one platform.
Oh, okay. All
And
right.
it's free. It's free to all men, not just Catholic, but anybody. And so we utilize that to help men get ministry to men going.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we do is we really do three things. We put on inspiring events. We help do men's conferences in the diocese. We want every diocese to have an annual men's conference. And we want every diocese to have parish-based ministry to men going on, where men gather on a weekly basis.
Right.
I'll share in a minute why that's so important. So we have coaching and mentoring on how to do that. And then we have tools and resources on how to do that. So our inspiring events, we do a quarterly virtual summit with speakers that men hop on from around the world, actually.
Oh, wow.
And so why is all this so important? Here is the state of, I'm gonna say Catholic men, but I would say it is the state of all men. Currently, 50% of all adults experience loneliness and isolation
Mm-hmm.
in America today. 50% have that ongoing experience.
I'm surprised it's not higher, Robert, actually.
Yeah, you would think so, but 33% of men desperation lead male men to the highest suicide rates in history. Believe it or not, the largest group of suicide is men 65 and older. In America, it's not young people.
No.
It's men 65 years and older. Most young people between 19 and 29 are chronically isolated. So, and now moving on down, 55% of men know fewer than 10 men on a first name basis. 55% of Catholic men know less than 10 men on a first name basis. Think about that for a minute.
And I suspect well, and I don't know if it's worse, but it's not any better in the general population, that's for sure.
Oh, no, not at all. 31% of men have no close friendships with other parish members. Literally, 31% have no close friendships. And 17% of men only attend Mass weekly and connect with their parish community, 17%. So we have a situation where, men aren't engaged, they're isolated, they're lonely. And so how do we fix that? Well, men are 335% more likely to join in monthly men's events if they're engaged. Yeah. Men are more likely by 226% to have male friends if they're engaged in ministry to men. Men are 160% more likely to regularly volunteer in a parish if they're engaged with other men. So what we know is if we have men engaged with other men, amazing things happen. When men are engaged with other men in building it's really, you think about it, it's really conversion, which means taking knowledge of God into the heart.
Mhm.
When you become on fire with your relationship with Christ, you're a better husband, you're a better father, you're more engaged in parish life. So
Yes.
you have conversion, then you have the ongoing transformation by gathering with other men on a weekly basis. And men gathering with other men on a weekly basis is really where it happens, Larry,
Yes.
because they build meaningful, real relationships.
Yeah.
You know, you have them going through some kind of formation program, ongoing program. They pray together, and they really get to bond with other men. You know, and the walls come down because us men, you know, we live in a very, with other men, very surface relationship.
Oh yeah. Very
I
superficial.
mean, most men, you hear men, oh yeah, I'm doing fine. Next thing you know, they're leaving their wives and family and running off. I thought they were doing fine. Yeah, and
Mm.
so you get them engaged. So you have conversion, ongoing transformation, and then mobilization of the man.
Mm.
And you think about Christ, okay? What did he do with 12 men? They first had a conversion, right? Then he had an ongoing transformation of these men. And then at the end of the day, they mobilized.
Yes. 12 men, and they changed the world.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, we're not inventing anything new here. I mean, it's just,
Oh,
I mean,
Robert,
Jesus.
you'll love this. One of my professors when I was at Yale, where I went to seminary, he said to me, Larry, there's nothing fundamentally new in the world since the ancient Greeks and Jesus of Nazareth.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, you can look at all the, Tony Robbins around or all those. All they did is just repackage.
Repackage, redo, reinterpret. Yeah,
Yeah,
the ideas
yeah,
are the same.
yeah,
Ideas are the
yeah.
same.
Nothing new.
So,
And
so Robert, where are you now? I mean, your goal is to make this available nationwide.
throughout North America and then beyond.
Okay. And so how close do you think you are, and when are you projecting to get to the
Yeah,
summit?
yeah. So we did last year, we spent a lot of time, energy researching every diocese in North America to
Okay.
determine what is this real state of ministry to men. And what we found out is that because we really had to figure out what the landscape looked like,
Yeah.
and which is very challenging to do, but we did it. And so about 45% of the dioceses in North America have nothing going on,
Okay.
literally nothing.
So essentially half.
Yeah, essentially half. And the way we looked at it is how many of them had an annual conference and had parish-based ministry to men going on. And what we found out, there was about 20% of them had that. And we rated them a 4.
Okay.
And then the next level was, well, how many of them had parish-based ministry to men going on, but no conference? And that was about 13%, very low. And then how many of them had a conference, but no parish-based ministry to men going on? And that was about 22%.
Okay.
And the rest had nothing going on. And our goal is we want a conference, because a conference really doesn't do a lot except cast a wide net.
Hmm.
I
It
mean,
creates momentum, creates energy.
yeah, but if there's no place for those men to go, you're wasting your time.
Right. It just goes back to dormant again. It
Yeah,
has to
by
come
by
from.
by Monday, they're back in their routine. And that's what happened with Promise Keepers. They got men all jazzed up and
Yeah.
there's no place to go.
I'm ready. I'm ready. And
Yeah, ready. Yeah,
no next
nowhere to
step.
go.
No next
Yeah.
step. Well, I like the
And
fact that you're building it from the parish level upward.
yeah, you build it bottom up, top down. Now, and let me clarify, when we go into a diocese, you know, we are not under the diocese, but we are um, uh, we operate within the bishop's permission.
Okay.
Uh, the bishop's permission we work with the bishops, we work with the parishes,
Yeah.
with the diocese, and we're absolutely stay true to Catholic teachings. We have a Bishop Coffey is our Episcopal moderator on our board. He is the auxiliary bishop for the Diocese of the Military. And then we have a priest, a very well-known priest by the name of Father Larry Richards. He is on our board. Deacon Harold Brooks Sivers is on our board. And then we have like seven other guys, kind of like myself, if you will. And then currently today we have 10 paid associates on the team.
Okay.
So the organization is grown, and we have three coaches. I mean, four coaches, sorry. And they work with the diocese. And then we have regional leaders who are volunteers. The Catholic Church is divided up into regions.
Hmm.
And so we have regional leaders in each of those regions to work with the states and everything and the diocese.
So what's your revenue model? Is this a membership organization? Is there some sort of organized fundraising effort? What's your revenue model?
Yeah. So when we launched it, you know, I looked at it as a startup business, if you will.
Of course you would. Of course you would.
And I reached out to a group of men and some of the board members, and we agreed that we were going to fund this thing initially.
Mhm.
And we funded it out to where it's starting to generate significant revenues.
Good.
And with monthly donors, large donors, and we just 3 weeks ago brought on a full-time development person that is very, very good. He was a Legionnaire priest for many years. And
Yes.
the Legionnaires had a little bump in the road, and he left the priesthood, as a lot of priests did with the Legionnaires. And I happened to become acquainted with him over the years. He lives in Austin, so he just joined us, and he's very, very gifted. So Larry, I can tell you that the Holy Spirit has been just guiding us. I mean, it's just been amazing. Every time we needed somebody or something, it showed up. They showed up. I mean, my vice president, Dan Donaldson, I mentored him, and he approached me one day and said, "Hey, Robert, I was needing a really good, vice president of operations." He says, "I'm going to join your team, Robert." I'm like, "Whoa." I would have never thought to invite him. And the development person that came on board, when we decided we needed someone, I'd known Chris, and I picked up the phone and gave him a call about 2 months ago. Said, "Hey, Chris, what are you doing?" And he knew a little about what I was doing, and I told him what we were doing, and he happened to be in between things at that moment, and he said, "Robert, I'm in." So I mean, and we just that's how everybody that is on the team has showed up.
Well, and you're obviously on a divine trail.
Yeah,
That's what
and
you are.
we do every year since the first meeting in Milwaukee, we have an annual summit, and we move it around the country. And this year it's going to be at Christ the King Cathedral out in Orange County.
Mm-hmm.
And what we do, we bring leaders in from around North America. We'll have 350 leaders in. And Christ the King Cathedral, by the way, you're familiar with this place.
Oh yes. Oh yes. I've driven by it. I know where it is.
Well,
Yes.
it was the Crystal Cathedral,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know,
Well, I've been in the Crystal Cathedral before it was
Catholic.
the
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So the Catholic Church, the Diocese of Orange bought it several years back from the Schuler estate.
Yes.
And I was in it before I was ever a Christian, actually. And anyways, and so we're doing it this year out there.
Okay.
And it's
right.
the last week. It's the last weekend of March, and anybody that hears this podcast or watches it, whatever, you can go to heroicmen.org, and if you'd like to register for it, the registration is $400, and that covers 2 nights hotel, all the food. All
Oh,
you got to
really?
do is,
Oh, it's
yeah,
inclusive. Oh, wow.
yeah. All you got to do is just get there. And
So,
Larry, I would really want to extend an invitation to you personally from me.
well, thank you.
If you'd
And
like to come out, we'd
and when
love
is
to
it?
have you there.
When is
It
this
is,
again?
it is the last weekend of June.
All right. Last
Yeah.
weekend of June. And they would go to heroicmen.org.
Yep.
Okay.
Or you can go to Catholic Men's Leaders, CatholicMen'sLeader.org, but heroicmen.org is the easiest way.
All right.
And you can just register there.
This has been delightful. You are on a path, my friend.
Yeah,
Real path.
it's funny, Larry, because 25 years ago, I had just recently been baptized, and if someone would have told me that I would be doing today what I'm doing,
No,
or
no,
that
no,
I would become Catholic and doing what I'm doing in ministry to men in the Catholic Church, I would have looked at you and told you, you are smoking something. You are crazy.
it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my, this has been really delightful, Robert.
Thank you.
I know Chris, your development officer. You're well placed with him for sure.
Yeah.
And you're sort of positioning yourself now for some real solid growth. And you've had growth now, and now just moving forward, you're going to be able to really reach a lot of men that need you, that need work that you do. Men are isolated.
Yep.
Men will not tell you they're hurting.
Yeah.
They don't feel safe to do that. I'll tell you just a little story that happened to me. This has been, I guess maybe 10, 12 years ago. The house across me, well, I'm going to call it a second. It's my neighbor across, my neighbor's across the street. And then there's sort of a house on the corner. And the house on the corner was purchased by a couple, but they weren't going to move in for a while. And so they had their young son living over there. Now, when I say young son, I mean he was in his early 30s. All right. And he was military, 6 or 7 motorcycles in that garage, enough guns to start a war. I mean, you get the picture.
Yeah.
And he was very like this. And he came over to help me a couple of times. I was building a treehouse, and his name was Dell. And I said, "So Dell, were you a SEAL?" And he said, "No, I was in cryptology. Codes and all that,
Right.
And I must have given him kind of a strange look, because he said, You didn't think I was that smart, did you? I said, no, Dale. I said, but you don't look like a cryptographer. You look like a guy that hits the beach. Well, he was a very pleasant man, would have buddies that would come and go. Well, one day I came back from shopping midday, middle of the week. I get to our corner. There are two squad cars and a coroner's vehicle there.
Oh,
And I'm going, oh, this is not good. So come to find out, his mother was visiting and he went into the master bath and shot himself right then. And he was dead,
wow.
committed suicide. No, I mean, I didn't see it coming. And and to this day, I think about it and I think, is there anything I could have said or done?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I didn't know he felt that isolated. He's a nice
Yeah.
guy,
Yeah.
helpful, you know.
Our men in today's world, they are in a struggle like never before.
No.
Our men are getting slaughtered out there.
Well, in a lot of ways, and we could talk of this for about another hour,
Yeah.
is the lack of respect men and the strengths that they have are being in today's culture. Well, Robert,
Yeah.
I want to thank you for doing this. You're taking your time, and it's been a true delight. And I know this
Yeah.
will be our last conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, Larry, it's funny. We just met 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
and I feel like I've known you for literally years.
Okay. Great. All right. Um, everyone, we've had a delightful conversation with Robert Tunmire over the last few minutes, the organizer and co-founder of Heroic Men, who is the front-facing Catholic men's ministry. Delightful guy, and I want to thank him again for joining us. Thank you, Robert.
Glad to be here, Larry.
Next time, there'll be someone else, another interesting person on A Principal's Voices, and I invite you to tune in.